10 went down. The canister held 9. It was a reclamation Type 4, 41 kilos filled, worn on the back frame like a water bladder, and because the process that filled it did not distinguish between individuals, it sloshed.
Roll call.
No.
Bloom.
Rook did not answer.
Present.
Fitch said in Bloom's voice, which was a good Bloom nasal and put upon.
Dyer.
Fitch.
Present, sir, and may I say the accommodations have improved.
He shifted the strap on his shoulder. He was carrying the other end of the frame, because 41 kilos over 40 kilometers is a two-man problem.
Vasquez.
The slope ahead was chalk and ash, 16 degrees, no cover for 200 meters. Rook counted his steps in hundreds because it kept him honest about distance. He was at 411 since the ridge.
Vasquez isn't answering. Vasquez was always like that.
Your air.
My air is my business.
Your air is my business. Because I'm carrying you out if you drop.
You'd carry me?
I'd carry the canister. Fitch laughed, 3 notes, and the little green tick on Rook's heads-up jumped with it. The audio line for Channel 2, the only other line still lit. 8 lines had gone gray in the first 19 hours. The 9th went gray on the second morning, and Rook had watched it happen from 11 meters away, and there had been nothing in the world he could have done about it, which he had confirmed twice since, at night, lying still. 500, 600. They were going to Site 9 to burn it down. That was the whole mission, stated plainly. The research station had opened something, and the something had got into the air handling, and the something ate the polymer in seal gaskets at a rate of about 1 millimeter an hour once it took. The station had a sterilization protocol that had to be armed by hand from inside the core. The core had sent 10. The core would have sent 1 if the core had known.
3 things you never do on a rock like this.
You've done this.
I've done a version.
Rook waited.
1. You never take your helmet off to scratch your nose. 2. You never trust a floor you didn't watch somebody else walk on first.
Pause for the 3rd. Fitch always paused for the 3rd the way a man pauses at the top of a ladder. 3.
3. You never let a sergeant name the mission, because he'll call it something like Operation Bright Hammer, and then that's what's on your headstone.
It was funny. Rook did not say so. He had not said so for 4 years, on the theory that Fitch got enough of that from everyone else and might, if left unwatered, eventually quiet down. He had been wrong about that every day for 4 years and had not adjusted the theory. They rested at 1400 in the lee of a spoil heap. Rook took the canister off the frame and set it upright, because on its side it made a noise. Fitch sat with his back against it. That's a person.
That's 9 people, and 8 of them owed me money.
Fitch tipped his helmet back against the steel.
Hey, Rook, where'd they get the name? HESPER-6, who's naming these? There's a man in an office, an actual salaried man, and his job is he gets a survey packet and he goes, Hesper, and then next week another one comes in and he goes...
Fitch made a face of enormous cognitive strain.
HESPER-2.
Water.
I'm drinking.
Drink. He drank. Rook watched the level in his own bladder. 2.1 liters. 28 kilometers remaining. At their rate, 2 days, and the numbers worked if nobody bled.
You know what I want? When we get back, I want a chair. Not a bunk, not a bench, a chair with a back on it and armrests, and I want to sit in it in a room where nothing is trying to get in. You don't want anything.
I want the chair. Fitch looked at him for a second longer than the line deserved. Then he stood up, slapped the canister twice, and said,
On your feet, ladies.
The station came into view on the 3rd morning, at 904 steps past the last waypoint, and it looked like something dropped rather than built. 6 hab drums and a mast, all of it furred over in pale gray growth that moved in the wind at a slightly different frequency than the wind. They went in through the vehicle bay. Fitch cited a regulation that did not exist.
Paragraph 19-4, a Marine shall not comment on the smell.
And Rook checked his gasket seams under the wrist lamp, at the elbow, at the collar, and then checked Fitch's, and Fitch stood with his arms out like a man being fitted for a suit and said,
Not here. People will talk.
The Corps was under the second drum, down a service stair. They found Ellery in the corridor, or the shape of her, and Rook logged the position and marked her for a reclamation team that would not be coming, and Fitch said nothing at all for 11 minutes, which was how Rook knew. The sterilization panel wanted 2 keys and a 9-minute countdown, which was designed by a man who had never had to run anywhere. They armed it. The station began somewhere far off in its own body to make a sound like a kettle deciding. Go. They went up and out through the bay and into the yard, and the yard was crust, ash crust over the vent field that had made the whole valley warm enough to grow the thing they had just come to kill, and they had crossed it once already, coming in on a line Rook had walked first and marked with 2 chem sticks. Fitch was talking. He was ahead by 4 meters, off the marked line by maybe 2, 41 kilos of the squad bouncing on the frame between his shoulders, and he was saying,
3 things you never do on a rock like this. 1, you never volunteer. 2,
the ground took him. There was no noise to it worth describing. A soft collapse, a cough of gray, a sound like a bag of flour set down hard. The crust went in a circle about 2 meters across, and Fitch went with it, and the frame went with him, and the green tick on channel 2 jumped once, not a word, just an intake, and then held flat. Rook was on his belly at the edge in under 3 seconds, standard. The shaft went down at 80-some degrees and turned. Heat came up out of it at a rate his suit reported as 411 degrees at 8 meters and climbing. He put a line down. The line's tip melted at 19 meters and reported nothing before it did. He called it 4 times. He waited between calls at intervals of 30 seconds, which is protocol, and then he waited an additional 4 minutes, which is not. Then the kettle sound under the station went up an octave, and Rook got off the crust and moved to the ridge. Because the sterilization burn had a blast radius of 600 meters, and he was inside it. He made the ridge in 140 steps. He turned and watched Site 9 open up white, and the white went into the vent field, and the vent field took it, and pale gray stuff all over the valley went black, and then went to nothing, and the wind changed. He logged the time. He logged the confirmed detonation. Under casualties, he entered 1, and under recovery, he entered 0, and he looked at 0 for a while, and then he closed the log. The canister had gone down with the frame. That was the part that took a moment to arrange. He had carried 9 people 28 kilometers, and now he was carrying none of them, and the regulation on reclamation was very clear, and there was no version of the next 4 days in which the regulation was satisfied. Rook took a drink of water. 2.1 liters had been for 2 men over 2 days. He had, therefore, a surplus. He had more air than he needed now, too. He started walking. Extraction was 31 kilometers northeast at a beacon they'd cached on the way in. He counted his steps in hundreds because it kept him honest about distance. The first night he stopped at a rock shelf and cleared a spot and then cleared a second spot on the left, because Fitch slept on the left, and then he sat down on the second spot himself and ate. The rations were tabbed in pairs. He ate one and put the other back. At 0300, he woke and checked the HUD. 8 gray lines, 1 gray line. He looked at Channel 2 for a while, which showed a flat rule and the word Fitch, D, and a timestamp of last transmission, 09:41:52, and the transmission itself, which the suit had recorded, 400 milliseconds of an inhale. He did not play it. He checked his gasket seams at the wrist, at the elbow, at the collar. Then he held his arms out for a second and put them down. Second day, 11 kilometers, terrain good. The thing about walking is that a man walking alone across ash makes a sound with his own suit. The pump, the joint of the left knee that had needed a shim since Tolvar, and the sound has a rhythm, and after a while the rhythm has gaps in it, and Rook found that he was leaving the gaps open. At the second waypoint he said, out loud, "Clear," and then stood there for the length of time it takes a man to say copy. Then he moved out. He thought about the chair. It was a legitimate thing to think about, because morale is a resource, and the manual says to husband it. A chair with a back on it and armrests, in a room where nothing was trying to get in. He worked out the specifics of the room. There would be a door and the door would be closed. He would not require a window. He got as far as who would be sitting in the other chair, and then he stopped, not because it hurt, but because the arithmetic was finished, and there was no more to do with it. 11 kilometers, 12. He noticed at some point that he had been walking on the right side of the ridgeline for 2 hours with a perfectly good route on the left, and he could not construct a tactical reason for it, and he logged nothing about this because there was nothing to log. He reached the beacon at 1600 on the 4th day, and dug it out and set it, and the shuttle acknowledged with a 4-hour window. He sat down on his heels to wait. The problem, and Rook turned it over with the flat attention he gave to a jammed feed or a bad seal, was this. For 4 years he had been under the impression that he was the equipment. Fitch talked and Rook made the talking possible, carried the other end, checked the seams, said no, said your air, said It was a functioning arrangement. It had a shape. There was the thing that happened, and there was the man it happened to. And Rook's job was to be the ground the man stood on, and he had been good at that job. He had been extremely good at that job, and he had never once considered what the ground was supposed to do afterward. He had assumed, without ever putting it in words, that the story was Fitch's. That was not sentiment, it was an assessment. Fitch was the one who spoke. A thing that speaks is a thing that continues. But the line had stopped in the middle. Not at the end of a line, in the middle of one. 1. You never volunteer. 2. Rook waited on his heels in the ash with his hands on his knees and tried for about 40 minutes to supply the second thing. You never trust a floor you didn't watch somebody else walk on first. That had been a 2 once. But it had been a 2 in a version that had a 3, and Rook could not build the 3, had never in 4 years built a 3, had only ever been the silence the 3 landed in. He tried anyway. He got as far as you, never several times. The shuttle came in at 1954 with its lamps on and its ramp already down. The crew chief was young and clean and looked at Rook's frame, the empty frame, the harness with nothing in it, for slightly too long. Sergeant, where's the rest of your unit? Below, Rook said. The reclamation. Below. The crew chief looked at the manifest, which said 10, and at Rook, which said 1, and did the subtraction in his face. "I'm sorry," he said. They lifted. Rook took the sling seat nearest the hatch and stowed his weapon and put his hands on his knees. Somebody offered him water and he took it and held it. 2.1 liters. That had been for 2 men over 2 days. The shuttle bay had 8 seats along the wall, and he was in one, and the seat beside him, on the left, had its harness folded up neat against the bulkhead the way they fold them when nobody's coming. Rook looked at his HUD one more time before he shut the suit down. 9 gray lines and a flat rule and the timestamp, and the 400 milliseconds. He did not play it. He looked out the hatch instead, at HESPER-6 going away under them, gray and warm and finally clean, and he thought that there was a man in an office somewhere, an actual salaried man, whose job was to sit down with a survey packet and name it, and that when the next one came across his desk, he would look at it for a while and then he would call it HESPER-7. Rook sat with that. There was nobody to say it to, so he held it the way you hold a full cup on a bad road, carefully, with both hands, for a long time. And then the shuttle made orbit, and he put it down,